government with their wisdom, and there is a stability which is called political stability in this part of the world for the last more than 60 years. This is something we can say with pride, having a lot of things happening throughout the globe. Now, what's our way forward? That's more important to us. If I look at the world, till 19th century, the whole world followed dependence culture. Strong nations made weaker nations their colonies. In a family, if somebody was earning, he made other members dependent on him. In business, a strong businessman would make a weaker businessman dependent on him. Brute force coupled with economics was the power of the world. Anybody who was strong made others dependent on them, and they ruled the world. There was a growth of arms and ammunition. There was growth of armaments throughout the globe. And that is how the world progressed till 19th century. Suddenly the world changed in the 20th century. People wanted to be independent. People wanted to have their own rights. Democracies came throughout the globe, they started flourishing. World graduated from dependence to independence. Independence was the buzzword. We got our freedom. New nations were born. New states were created. Joint families broke up. Small nucleus families came. At the same time, new business identities also came. New industrial organizations came. And independence was the buzzword. Power shifted from brute force to economics, money. Brute force was left only for disciplining the society wherever the state wanted to do. And when organizations became large, there were functional powers given to the people of those organizations. That's called delegation, and they had accountability. Now we are in 21st century. Neither dependence is going to work, nor independence is going to work. I say why? Because there has been explosion of knowledge. Internet has played something very strange. We have broken all the boundaries where knowledge sharing is concerned. And world is becoming truly a global village now. Means of communication have improved. People are traveling a lot. They love to see what is happening elsewhere. And in this process, the world has also become prosperous economically. And so have we. Today, to succeed in this world, instead of dependence and independence only, we have to go for interdependence now. Anywhere, if we want to succeed, more specialized knowledge is required, which each individual cannot have. We have to build teams around us, we have to do networking, we have to build association with others. And this is where we are heading in the 21st century. Now, power will also shift now. From brute force, which was primary till 19th century, to economics, which was dominant in 20th century, the power will shift to emotional bonds. Because for networking, for building teams, for creating association with others, you have to have strong emotional bonds. My friend, my partner, my associate. This is the language of the world which is going to change. And this is a power where fortunately we as Indians, we have excelled for centuries. Our family system, strong emotional bonds. Our caste system, strong emotional bonds. Our religious affinity is also strong emotional bonds. We have naturally grown with that. And we are heading for a growth probably which all of us may not be intellectually and mentally prepared for. But let me tell you, we will do it, all of us. Together we will do it. Because that's the bond which comes from an Indian family to start with. where mother is the central point of management. She cares for everybody, that's the first fundamental. She has concern for all members, particularly the weakest member of the family. When this weakest becomes stronger, then her concern shifts to another person who is now looking weaker. She willingly sacrifices when the system demands, and she gets pleasure out of this sacrifice. And that is what emotional bonding has fundamentals. And I would also say, I'm nice to see that the number of women it's not very large, but it's not very inadequate. What I used to see 25, 30 years back. This is also going to be the century of the women. Because they were dominated by men by brute force, because they were not equal. They survived all this world through their emotional bonds, creating love and care and affection in the families and in the society also. Ladies, it's your century. Get prepared. And the men, don't get scared of them, and don't get scared of losing power. You will also succeed if you develop these very qualities of care and concern and sacrificing for the sake of humanity. The more you acquire, it is not a feminine quality. It is just that they have a glorious past which they have inherited. Having said that, now let me come to the specifics. Where are we today? We are not a poor country. I want to say categorically. We are a rich country with plenty of pockets of poverty which we have to address. That's our challenge. There is 35 to 40% India which is prosperous. Almost 450 to 500 billion people. That's where India had looked very attractive as a market. But then there is another India which is called Bharat, the neglected India, which is poor, shackled. Almost 700 million people. Can you imagine if this Bharat comes in the category of India becoming prosperous in the next 15 to 20 years, what kind of nation this is going to be? Ladies and gentlemen, this is our challenge, which we have to accept. We have always talked about our glorious past of 2,000 years back, 3,000 years back. But today, I can certainly say we are getting an opportunity to repeat that past for us and for the whole world also, with our inherent strengths which are going to come into interplay in the next few years. And process has already started. We need to develop our villages. We need to create new cities. We need to create cities which have education, which is also affordable by people of the weaker India. We need to have health facilities in the same new cities. Why should we have courts and overcourts around Delhi and capital cities and district headquarters? Why not new areas? The place where you are standing, the land is 500 crores rupees per acre. And there are places in India where land is 3 to 5 lakhs rupees per acre. It's the same stone, it's the same earth. Why more? Because here too many people are getting crowded for opportunities. There nobody is going for opportunity. Should we not create opportunities for them? That's the challenge. Why can't that land also become very expensive? Because if it's needed, if it's brought up, some development is carried out, and all that is required is health, education, entertainment, sports, quality housing, quality commercial establishments, quality opportunities for people to come up in those areas. Why they have to migrate to the cities and create slums in the cities? This is what has happened in the recent past. Why can't we go out in the interiors? When there was a North-South war in America in 1861, can you imagine a country going for war after 85 years of its democracy? Because the South felt neglected by North. And that was the time the forefathers of Americans, they felt that you have to create new university and build new cities around universities only. Spread of education became a challenge for them, and they did it. They took a lot of time, but we don't need to take up that much time. We can only do it in another 15 to 20 years. And it's possible. And these are the opportunities for you also. Make a consortium. These are the investments which will definitely bring result. Why? Land is a resource under pressure in India. Population is increasing, pressure. Country is becoming prosperous, more pressure. I assure you, that's how I made my money in this country. Being in the government sector, in an honest way. Because land appreciates in India, whatever is the highest rate of interest, bank rate, say 10%, whatever is the highest inflation, say another 10%, add together, land will appreciate more than 20% per year regularly if nothing is done. But if the projects are built around land as a project, as a resource, which is diminishing resource in the sense because it's existing resource, but population is increasing, it will always be a success project. New cities with all that I have said. And the last part which I like to share with you is, when I was governor of Mizoram, that time we had carried out a study by the Planning Commission of this country. What is the need of the world in the human power, manpower? Western societies are aging societies where young people are very less now. All developed nations, whether you take North America, whether you take Western Europe, whether you take Japan, China also will fall in this category in another 20 years. Australia, New Zealand, all prosperous countries. They are going to have shortage of skilled manpower to service them. India as an English-speaking nation, we have plenty of manpower, and if you want to have skill development program in India for the skills required in these nations for physical services, and if they are of your quality, India also needs the same skills for our own country. This is another major opportunity, and we had figured out that 40 million people are required throughout the globe in the next, by 2020, not 6 years now. And by 2030 it will be more. That's the export of manpower of qualified people who have skills of the highest order. Not only that, human behavior skills also, which are soothing and comfortable for those societies. That's what you did in many years. They will help us, and we are going to have to be a very strong nation in the years to come. God bless you all and keep on doing well, and we are there to support you. Let's network between ourselves for the future of yours, future of Indian citizens, and future of the whole world. God bless you all. Now, before I retire, I am opening the floor to all of you. Please come on the dais, share your ideas in brief. And if you have any questions, we are very happy to answer you. There may be some doubts which are to be clarified by you. We will certainly reply that, because we are here to communicate with you, to understand you, and to help you to understand us also. Please, this session is open to you, and we'll finish this session by 1:30 positively. Thank you very much.
The open house session, thank you very much, Your Excellency, for a wonderful address. That was His Excellency, the former Governor of Mizoram, Honorable Shri Amulya Ratan Kohli, giving his address. We're going to handle this open house session in a little while. Whilst we are going to expect slips from you for your questions, which will come up to the stage to be handled by the top table, the panelists on the top table, I have the privilege and the honor in requesting Sardar Dalbir Singh, the Secretary of the AICC, to kindly address our guests. And in the meanwhile, you can also write your slips and send them up to the top table, please, for the open house session. Your names and what you would like to discuss. Thank you. Mr. Dalbir Singh, if you could kindly address our audience, please. In the meantime, the slips will be given to our lovely hostesses who are in uniform saris. We don't need microphones, dear. We'll just take the question slips, and if you could bring the question slips up to the stage. We do not need microphones. Please collect the slips from the delegates and give them to the top table, please. Thank you.
Respected Bhisham Narayan ji, Krishna Murthy ji, respected BP Singh ji, respected Kohli ji, my friend Dr. Jeet ji, Neeraj Jain, Ansari ji, and my very dear friend and colleague, Major Ved Prakash. And all our esteemed members of Indian diaspora here this afternoon. It's always a joy and delight to be at this conference, which I've been attending, I think, with a regular frequency in the last few years. I must compliment you because I also had two young children who went to the US to study. They both went to the London School and then University of Chicago. But I'm happy both of them have come back, having spent 7 or 8 years of their lives there. I know what it means to be separated from the place of your origin, to be away from your families. You need to be complimented for all the dedication, commitment, zeal that you have demonstrated in excellence wherever you have gone. It's a great deal of sacrifice living away from your own country, from your families. Maybe you went away a few years ago, your parents went, your grandparents went. And speaking on this forum, and particularly coming at number 6 to speak, when most of the distinguished speakers have presented to you various perspectives, there is a definite disadvantage. I'd like to only touch upon a few things. Of late, there has been a tendency that some of us get cynical about India, some of us apprehensive. We say, well, India is going downhill, something wrong with the economic policy, something wrong with the governance, and there are issues of polity because some new parties are emerging, the new social transformation is taking place, and things so forth. I'd like to put across to you that India, with centuries of wisdom behind it, India has had huge resilience, huge repository of talent, potential, leadership. And you heard from the other speakers, you heard from Excellency Mr. Kohli, how we were till early 90s when we almost had to mortgage our gold. And of course, liberalization of economy was probably the greatest decision of the 20th century as far as India was concerned. Narasimha Rao launched those reforms, and under stewardship of Dr. Manmohan Singh, who is now our Prime Minister, he heralded the reform process. And with that reform process, we have not looked back. We've come a long, long way. You cannot imagine. I mean, it's the same country today. When we look around today, we used to have only one All India Institute of Medical Sciences. We used to have only a handful of 6 to 7 central universities. We have almost close to 44 central universities now. We have almost, I think, added another 9 Indian Institutes of Management. We have added another 7 Institutes of Technology. We added 7 NIITs. We added another 5 Institutes of Scientific Research. And apart from that, I think our literacy rate has grown from 64 to 74% only in the last 5 years. And we have added, in the last 7 years, we have added 5 lakh schools under Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan. I mean, this is the kind of work that has been done. On health sector, I mean, 10 years ago, you could not imagine. After all, we are 1.2 billion people. We are world's largest diversity. In fact, most of our problems stem from our diversity. We have 4,735 communities and sub-communities. We have 2,200 dialects and languages. So it is something that most small nations and cities in Europe do not grapple with, that we have to do. And when we look at our problems, when we look at our complexities, when we look at our, it takes longer for a solution. It takes more out-of-box solutions here. It takes much longer. People get restless. But I think fundamentally, it is because of our diversity. that we have to face peculiar sets of problems. But I'm very happy that we have been able to find solutions to many of these problems. That's why we reached here today. India is almost polio-free. And it's not small, 1.2 billion people, that much of population. We have 70% people living in rural areas. There is no polio in India today. And it's a phenomenal achievement. HIV, which seemed a huge threat 10 years ago, because we have a huge population, and it's today very, very much under control with efforts of NACO and other government programs. And of course, we have problems like tuberculosis, we have problems of course, cancer, and of course, but I suppose all developed societies, even the US, we have a huge amount of, I think, patients suffering with cancer today because they haven't been able to find solutions to many of these health problems. But we have come a long way in terms of economic development. In the last, from 2004 to 2013, we have almost consistently grown at the rate of, at least average growth rate has been nearly 8% of the GDP. And even in the projected growth rate in the next, I think, a few months is in the region of about 6%, and which is not bad considering that 10 years ago, because of the global meltdown, I think the world was reeling under economic stress, and there was a lot of problem. I think none of the countries, even in Europe, grew more than 2.5%. I mean, there were countries which had a negative rate of growth, and US maybe 2.5%, 3%. With that, I think we have done phenomenally well, and I think what most of the speakers have brought about, my distinguished colleague on the panel, are that we are a very, very successful democracy. We are not only the largest democracy, we are the most representative democracy today. We have 3.2 million people who are elected directly. We have our local government units in what we call the Panchayati Raj system. It's only in India and some other countries. So we have the most representative democracy anywhere in the world. We have stable, we have a huge legacy of the past, and I think we have a very, very promising future for all those who wish to come here and invest. You don't even have to think twice. Of course, there can be hiccups in terms of governance. There can be slight governance deficit. Of course, like many countries of the world, we have our own sets of problems. Well, corruption is one of the problems. That's why the country decided to put together a bill like Lokpal Bill, and we have brought one of the most phenomenal pieces of legislation in the last few years, RTI, Right to Information. We brought very, very important bills like right to food, right to education. After all, we cannot discount the fact that 70% of India still lives in rural India. Officially, we have almost 32% of the population, which we call poverty line. But let me tell you, we have a huge number who still live less than $2 a day. I think number maybe almost close to 50 to 55%. So we targeting not only growth, but we also looking at inclusive growth. You know, like another speaker said, of course, we have islands of prosperity, and a sea of poverty is something that the nation cannot put up with for very long. So there has been concerted effort of the government in the last few years to actually target economic growth with inclusivity. So it is inclusivity that we are targeting, and I'm sure in days to come, India has a very, very promising future because we have consistently, even today, I think our saving is in the region of 30%, our investment is in the region of about 28%, and growth rate has been more or less consistent. And I think the worst is behind us, and irrespective of whether in the election year you can continue to speculate who comes to power, who doesn't come to power. A democracy survives, democracy has widened, democracy has deepened. Even with the people's movement, even with the movement of civil society, our democracy is going to be stronger, deeper, and meet all your requirements. Not taking much because there is very little time left for question and answers, and we'd like to throw open the floor to you for anyone of you would like to ask any questions. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
I have got a few names from various NRIs who would like to speak. Dr. Rohit Garg.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'll make it very brief and brisk because time is already running late. First of all, thank you NRI Welfare Society, Gurinder ji, Deepak ji, for letting me share my thoughts with you from people all over the world. And if I'm not wrong, people from all over the country too, because people are coming from Goa, Uttar Pradesh, and I think various other parts of the world. You know, Major Ved Prakash ji, talked about people of India as one of the main resources, and being a doctor, being a psychiatrist, I also feel that health of the people is very important for the growth of any country. That's a common belief. But my personal belief is that physical health is important to do good to your own self. And mental health, you need to be mentally healthy to do good to society and to do good to your own country. And if we see that the awareness of mental health in the country is very low, and which is doing no good to the society, which is not doing no good to the society. And as Shri VP Singh ji also talked about free mind for the development of the growth of the country. So we all know that this less awareness needs to be changed to bring in a change in the thought process of the people so that the growth can be achieved in a much better way. So what we all do is that we have a very progressive planning to do so in this country. Like you all would be happy to know that in 1991 India was the first country where they started this train by the name of Lifeline Express, where they have catered to more than 8 lakh people in the rural countries. So this is a train which goes to the various rural areas in the country, and it has state-of-art medical facilities where they do the surgeries, where they treat on the OPD basis as well. So what we are trying to do is that we are trying to associate with this Lifeline Express, go to the various parts of the country, distribute handbills over there, do the medical OPDs, and create some mental health awareness. We have also created some rural sites in the country where we distribute handbills, we do regular OPDs and checkups to bring in an awareness about the mental health and to remove the stigma from the society. And the rest of the plan is that to create a suicide is a very sensitive issue these days. If we see, there are more than 1 lakh suicide cases which occur in the world within a year. So that means plenty in a day. So we are also planning to create a 24-hour suicidal helpline in all the possible languages, which could help people talking about their own beliefs, and if we could prevent those precious lives and those people who can do good to this society and this country. And in this regard, Gurinder ji, Deepak ji have been great help and motivation to us. And we would need help, suggestions and blessings in removing stigma as far as mental health and psychiatry is concerned. And also, if any kind of suggestions or any kind of plans could be done so that the India can become more healthy as far as psychiatry or mental health is also concerned. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rohit Gupta. Professor Samba Reddy, Texas. There are lots of speakers, and I would appreciate if everybody will be a bit brief. We'll be able to listen to everybody because we want to conclude this session as soon as possible because we have the validity session when the minister is going to be coming very soon.
Myself, Professor Samba Reddy from Texas, I just wanted 2 minutes of the time because we have seen, my question is mostly on the higher education side. I've received all my education in government schools, and then like most of you, when migrated to US and other countries looking for opportunities. But I think recently we have seen this new wave of privatization in the higher education for good or bad. But the question is, compared to the Western countries where majority of the higher education is in the public sector, where the government supports all the universities and research and everything, and we are going the other direction. giving permissions to all private universities and colleges. Are we heading the right direction? That's a question that I want to throw to our intellectual community here. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you, NRI Society of India. Thank you.
It's a, sorry, can you hear me? Yes. I'm Dr. Jeet Nagpal. Presently, I chair the Board of Governors of Amity, which is a not-for-profit, the largest private sector university in the country, with almost 18 campuses in India and about 8 abroad. 2 questions, and I've also been physically responsible for developing healthcare infrastructure in this country for many years. So both the speakers have brought out 2 fundamental aspects. And before I go into and answering their questions, I'd like to say that healthy people make a healthy nation. Nobody can question that. And therefore, health and education are fundamental drivers of economy. Now, equitable and universal access to education and healthcare, therefore, are fundamental socio-economic drivers of a nation. Fortunately for me, having been, I would not go into my past, how I grew up from a DAV school to whatever I've achieved in life. But just to say that the opportunities that exist in the country are both on the basis of the development and the contributions of our Indian diaspora from abroad. The lifestyle that is available to us is comparable to the best in the world, but then we also have a lot of people who are left behind unattended. So when I use the word universal and equitable access, that means that those people, universal means everyone, and equitable means that it should be comparable. So I would not go back into what Amity is doing, but principally there's a need for growth in our country, and it is necessary that our diaspora, which is very well entrenched in the world, participating in both the health and educational development in those countries, must contribute either through internationalization of our facilities or by returning home and contributing to this great endeavor. I would consider me as a facilitator. My address and details would be available to me, having built certain institutions like AIMS in Kashmir, Batra Hospital, and 32 other hospitals in the country, and in Maldives and in Middle East, another 28 hospitals. I believe that this is an area where we can grow significantly. Education is my recent domain, and we are taking Amity to Dubai. This is the inauguration, groundbreaking 3 days from now. But going back to the fundamental aspects of mental health, I'm responsible for health sector reforms in Kashmir today, and I realized that almost 6 to 8 suicides happen a day purely because of mental torture. And we had invited, like what our close friend had said, what they're doing back home, we had invited Doctors Sans Medicine, Doctors Without Barriers, to come and help us in finding solutions to the mental health problem. I can only say this, but we'll have a lot of opportunity to interact during lunchtime, and I'll be delighted to answer many more questions. Welcome, my diaspora. I've been a part of diaspora too, so I know what we can do for this country. Very welcome. Thank you.
Dr. Ashok Kapoor from UK. Your office is in UK?
Yeah, head office is in UK, and I could Namaskar to everybody. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity, and I could very well recognize Dr. Ajit Nagpal, whom I had the opportunity to meet in Middle East. He was with us, I'm sure, in Alay and Dubai, developing a lot of centers. So, in fact, health and education goes together. This is what, in fact, we have learned in Dubai, and in fact, the rulers of Dubai have also started on this very project of bringing health and education. Every speech of our ruler, where we work right now in Dubai, is mixed with health and education. And I took some points from him, and I will request, in fact, I'm happy that Ajit Nagpal is here, that we also started on the same route. last about 2 years back. And of course, our academy in UK is now about 10 years old. And last 2 years in Dubai, where the medical education is just picking up. But I was surprised in 2 years what we have done, it's not still available in India. We teach our undergraduates to do their post-graduation in Australia, Canada, UK, New Zealand. We take medical graduates. In fact, what was happening in Dubai, the medical graduates were coming out from the subcontinent, the expatriates who used to stay there. They were not able to do post, they didn't know what to do, and they will land up in insurance jobs and very small jobs, becoming medical representatives. And this was a great opportunity we saw, that why not to guide them, because most of them belong to the business families, the rich families. They were just they wanted to make one of their child a doctor, and they'll put one of the colleges which were not recognized even. So what concept we took, and we were supported very well by the government of Dubai and UAE, that to start educating the students who are produced there, whether they are Arabs or expatriates belonging to subcontinent, to guide them to come to even India to do the post-graduation. But we were more involved in sending them for MRCPs, MRCOGs, and various post-graduation programs in UK, preparing them from USMLE to go to USA for doing post-graduation. So all those things have been working very well in 2 years, and when I came to India, I was surprised there's nothing like that exists here. So I just wanted to partner with some of my partners if available here to start some type of academy in this part of the world, and we'll be more than happy to invest as well as to be partner in that. Thank you so much.
Dr. Kirti Pingle from USA.
Good afternoon, everyone. Actually, I have a few suggestions. Respected dignitaries, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is actually truly an honor for me to come here today and participate in this glittering function. I would like to thank NRI Welfare Society for bringing the NRI community together every year. This helps us as NRIs to participate in the functions and help India to serve in any way, in every possible way. So being in the US, away from India, I strive to keep a connection with India. While living outside, most people tend to gravitate more towards our culture, our tradition. In a comparable manner, I feel that Ayurveda provides me this opportunity to stay in touch with the culture and my home country. I feel that it is a privilege to me to able to spread the awareness of this ancient branch of Indian medicine in the whole globe, in the West. Most of us today talk about impressive growth we are seeing in India on all fronts, the improving economy and increasing global opportunities that are made possible by various global connections. Today I want to talk about something related. I want to talk about our next generation, that is our youth. These are the generations will drive our country forward. With the changing trends of modernization, our daily routines and lifestyles have changed drastically. So there is an increase in competition, increase in peer pressure, which has made the lives of young generations more stressful than ever before. And all this has a tremendous negative effect on the health, and it is reflected by increasing number of physical, mental issues and many psychiatric problems. I would like to take this opportunity to focus on helping today's youth achieve physical, mental and spiritual well-being. Ayurveda states that good physical and mental health will make one a positive person and of course a good human being. Eating healthy diet, practicing yoga and meditation, and restoring to moderation in all aspects of life will make the life richer. Since youngsters are the foundations of our nation, a positive change in attitude of our youth will help India be successful and prosperous. So let us pledge together to invest in our youth, be mindful of their emotional needs and spiritual needs, and follow the basic principles of our ancient culture and thus help India be successful. Ayurveda can lead us from stressful lifestyle and diseases to the happy and peaceful life, similar to what it is mentioned in the Vedic prayers. Lead me from unreal to the real, lead me from death to the immortality, lead me from darkness to the light. May there be peace everywhere. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrutyorma Amrutangamaya, Om Shanti Shanti. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Dr. Ramaswamy from Canada. Our Governor Sahib BP Singh ji has written a book. It's most important for all your children abroad. It's called Our India. And we'll see to it that if we can procure it today and distribute it amongst you people so that you can take back home and give it to your children and they will be more enlightened about the India back home.
Thank you.
Dr.
Thank you very
Ramaswamy.
much for giving me this opportunity. I'm from Canada, McGill University in Montreal. I've been there for almost 40 years. I graduated from here, got my training from CFTRI in Mysore in food technology, and I've been teaching food technology, ever since, when I went back to Canada. A lot of emphasis was made on food production, and today we are almost self-sufficient in most of the foods. Okay, one thing is to produce the food, but the second thing is to preserve it. If you don't preserve it, whatever we produce is going to be wasted. Okay? In order to have full security, global food security, we need to preserve, we need to protect, we need to process what we have actually produced. I think the Ministry of Food Processing is already doing a number of things here, but it has to do much more. We have many, thousands and thousands of food professionals of Indian origin in the North America itself. Globally we have many more, and we all always are interested in collaborating and bringing whatever we have learned, whatever we teach there, we'd like to bring it back here as well. And we look for that kind of opportunities, and that will bring us together, and that will make India very strong as well. I just want to make sure that this point is taken into consideration. Thank you very much.
Dr. Ramaswamy, we have the food processing minister coming in the next session, so I think you can put this question to him and he will be able to give you a better answer on that. Dr. Dayal Singh Sardana. Dr. Dayal Singh Sandhu, I'm sorry.
Good afternoon. Namaste, Sat Sri Akal, Assalamu Alaikum. First of all, I, with a profound sense of respect, I thank all our elite leaders and giving us the opportunity to share a few words. I'm a distinguished professor of research at University of Louisville in Kentucky, USA, but it's very much true about all of us. I was introduced by Dr. Kuldeep Kumar at NCRT, and he said Dr. Sandhu's head is in America, but his heart is in India. I think that's pretty true about all of us. Our heart is in India, that's why we are here. I'd like to congratulate our leaders, congratulate India as a whole for a tremendous progress we have made. A lot of time people criticize few things, but you have to see, compare with other countries who got independence at the same time we got. I can tell you we are 1,000 times better than many other countries. We are not without some challenges. What I'm saying is not, I'm trying to criticize, I'm pointing out the challenges like some of us already did. We do have issue with mental health counseling, mental health issues. It's natural. When you have so much economic revolution, so much economic progress, that's natural to happen. That's the index of your prosperity. I would say that I'm trying to quote Bertrand Russell when he says, every man has a philosophy. If a man says he has no philosophy, he has a philosophy of having no philosophy. Same way all the countries have a philosophy. I learned India's philosophy when I was in 7th grade and studying Sanskrit in district Jalandhar. What say? I am Nija Praveti Ganna Cha Laguchet Sam, Udhar Charita Namatu Vasuda Ev Kutumbakam. He is mine and he is a stranger. That kind of thinking is the thinking of narrow-minded people. For broad-minded people, the whole world is one family. That's a great slogan of India has given to the world. India is ahead. I'm surprised that every time I come to speak, 2 days ago I spoke at Hindu University Banaras about neuroscience and its effect on mental health counseling. India's knowledge is ahead of the United States, I can tell you that. Only thing is, we need to apply that knowledge more. I'd like to summarize India's problem in 4 words. Those problems or challenges. Start with the letter P. Number 1 is population, pollution, prejudice, and poverty. But how can that be addressed? It's a very new field, a lot of people don't know. In the United States, we have a new field called professional counseling. I happen to be the president of that association, American Counseling Association, and the president of AMCD, Association for Multicultural Counseling and Development. I dare to say that we can address India's problem through professional counseling. What I have done as a senior Fulbright research scholar at Guru Nanak Dev University, I started Association of Mental Health Counseling with the support from the university's chancellor and also from the Fulbright Commission in New Delhi. Right now, I have more than 600 people member and 318 members are on the Facebook. On a personal level, I like to share what happened to me when I left to study for higher study 40 years ago. And those are the expressions I have written in Punjabi poetry last night. I'd like to share in a few words. It says, सब दुनिया तो सोना देश मेरा, सब दुनिया तो सोना देश मेरा, मेरियां अखां विच वसदा रहा, even after 40 years. हज़ारां मीलां दी दूरी ते याद करके कदे मैं रोंदा रहा ते कदे मैं हसदा रहा. घर मैं वसाया दूर वतना तो, घर मैं वसाया दूर वतना तो, फिर भी मुड़ मुड़ इंडिया नूं ए नसदा रहा. Every night I have thought about India. Never. I forgot. कुछ लाइनां भारत के नाम ते and I will ask forgiveness. सब दुनिया तो उच्चा होए ना तेरा, सब दुनिया तो उच्चा होए ना तेरा, भैन गूंजा ते जकारे हिंदुस्तान दे, महान शक्ति बनया देश मेरा, महान शक्ति बनया देश मेरा, जावां बलिहारे मैं हिंदुस्तान दे. शमा ते पतंगे दा प्यार साडा, शमा ते पतंगे दा जिवें प्यार साडा, असीं हां बनजारे हिंदुस्तान दे. कदे भी साडी लोड़ पै जाए, कदे भी साडी लोड़ पै जाए, असीं जाइए वारे वार हिंदुस्तान दे. दुनिया दे सोने रतन, दुनिया दे सोने रतन तुसीं हिंद रतन, द वर्ड वी गोइंग टू गेट. दुनिया दे सोने रतन तुसीं हिंद रतन, साथियो चमकदे सितारे हिंदुस्तान दे, और मिलके वधाइए शान हिंदुस्तान दी, असीं आशिक ते प्यारे हिंदुस्तान दे. धन्नवाद तुहाडा सब दा, तुसीं लीडरां दे वास्ते है, एड्रैस टू द लीडर्स. धन्नवाद तुहाडा सब दा, तुसीं हो रखवारे हिंदुस्तान दे, झुक झुक के प्रणाम तुहानूं, तुसीं आगू ए सितारे हिंदुस्तान दे. थैंक यू सो मच.
Dr. Sarita Kapoor from Dubai.
I published a recent thing. You might like to read for
Amazing, absolutely, absolutely. I'll be delighted.
Good afternoon, dignitaries, women and ladies and gentlemen. I am actually a gynecologist, obstetrician and gynecologist working in Dubai from last 15 years. Only one small suggestion I wanted to ask to all the dignitaries that we have been holding quite a lot of camps, doing a lot of social work in Dubai. Dr. Nagpal knows it well. And the thing is that I wanted a platform, just a small, I have not been prepared with any speech or anything. It's just a small suggestion I wanted to ask. How can I expand it towards India to make the maternal and the child health better? See, that's part of my field. I wanted to expand. If any camps can be held, Dubai is the privilege for me. I can fly down, come up, and I want really something which can be spread out.
First of all, let me share with you that I've been principal advisor to the UAE government for the last 15 years, since the time you have been there,
Yeah.
and responsible for bringing health sector reforms, including the universal access to healthcare through social insurance. Now, considering what you have said, my first recommendation to you is that I'm back in 3 days in Dubai, and there's a very important foundation which has been founded called Al Jalila Foundation. Al Jalila is the daughter of the ruler of Dubai, Sheikh Mohammed, and they have founded this purely for maternal and child health. I would like you to get involved.